All right, let's get right into this. We often imagine monsters lurking in the shadows, but what if the most dangerous evil doesn't hide at all? What if it smiles, joins community clubs, and, yeah, even dresses up as a clown? This is the story of John Wayne Gacy, and it's a deep dive into how a mask of total normalcy can hide the most profound darkness imaginable. Let's start with just a number: 33. That's the confirmed number of teenage boys and young men that Gacy murdered. It's a number that immediately hits you with the horrifying scale of his crimes, crimes that went on for years, right under everyone's noses. And this is where his reign of terror finally came to an end. In 1978, an investigation led police to Gacy's quiet suburban house. And what they found there? They unearthed a scene of just unimaginable horror. It shattered the peace of that community and exposed a secret that had been buried for way, way too long. So this brings us to the central question of this whole explainer. It's not just about what he did, but how he did it. How does a guy who seems so integrated into his community, so ordinary, manage to hide something so monstrous? That's exactly what we're going to unpack here. To really get the how, we first have to understand his mask. See, Gacy wasn't some recluse hiding from the world. No, he was a master of public perception. He built this persona of respectability, and that became his most powerful and effective shield. For starters, he was a successful contractor. Now, this wasn't just a job for him, it was a tool. It gave him an air of legitimacy and, really crucially, a constant stream of young men looking for work. It put potential victims directly in his path, all under the guise of offering them a job. But he didn't stop there. Gacy got deeply involved in local politics, in community groups. He worked hard to build relationships with police officers and local officials, through parties, and just became this familiar, trusted face around town. That network made him seem totally untouchable. And then, of course, there's his most infamous persona, Pogo the Clown. He would entertain kids at local hospitals, at parties. Think about that for a second. It's such a powerful image of complete and total harmlessness. Who would ever suspect the friendly neighborhood clown of doing anything sinister? And this just lays it all out. It shows you the chilling split, right down the middle. On one side, you have the public image he's so carefully crafted, the trusted businessman, the civic leader. And on the other side, the private reality, a manipulative, coercive, and brutally violent predator. The massive gap between those two faces, that was his hunting ground. So you have to ask, where did this intense need for control come from? A lot of analyses point right back to his childhood. He grew up with a father who was physically and emotionally abusive, a real domineering figure. And that upbringing is often seen as a key reason for his adult obsession with power and having absolute dominance over anyone he saw as weaker than him. And this need for control, it showed up in a horrifyingly consistent pattern. Gacy's crimes, they weren't just random acts of violence. Not at all. They were methodical, calculated expressions of his obsession, from who he targeted to exactly how he lured them in. He specifically went after the vulnerable. His victims were almost always teenage boys and young men. Many were looking for a job, some had run away from home, or they came from backgrounds where, their disappearance might not set off immediate, huge alarm bells. Their vulnerability was a part of his calculation. His whole method was really a three-step process, and it was all designed for control. First, there's the lure, an offer of a job, a drink, maybe a place to stay. Step 2 was isolation, getting them back to his house, where he was in complete command. And finally, coercion, where intimidation and physical force would ultimately seal their fate. And this is the crucial point. The violence itself was a performance of power. The source material really emphasizes that his crimes involved these ritualized acts of control, scenarios he staged to reinforce his own sense of absolute authority over his victims. It was never just about the act, it was about the dominance. This brings us to a really unsettling part of the story. Why wasn't he caught sooner? And the answer isn't just about how cunning he was. It's about the systemic failures that actually allowed him to hide in plain sight for all those years. So a few things were at play here. His social status and that public persona acted as a powerful shield. His cozy relationships with law enforcement, well, that kept people from looking too closely, at least at first. And critically, and this is heartbreaking, missing persons reports for his victims were often just dismissed, labeled as typical runaway cases. The system just completely failed them. This leads to a concept from the source material called structural oversight. The idea here is that Gacy's crimes weren't just enabled by his own secrecy. They were enabled by societal systems that valued his public image more than accountability, and systems that, tragically, just discounted the lives of his marginalized victims. So, after all of this, what do we take away? The Gacy case left behind an uncomfortable but really vital legacy. It forced criminology and society as a whole to completely rethink how we perceive danger and who we choose to trust. The end finally came in 1978. After his arrest, Gacy was convicted and ultimately sentenced to death. And psychological evaluations, they just confirmed what his actions had already shown: a profound lack of empathy and an incredible ability to manipulate, total hallmarks of an antisocial personality. This quote from our source really sums it all up. Gacy's story isn't about a monster who was hiding in the dark. It's about a monster who stood right in the light, shielded by the very things we're all taught to respect: community involvement, success, and a friendly face. And that's really the ultimate lesson here. This case is a chilling reminder of the vulnerability we all have when it comes to misplaced trust. It forces us to confront this uncomfortable truth that respectability can be a mask, and a very effective one at that. Which leaves us with a final and pretty lingering question. The Gacy case happened decades ago, but its lesson is absolutely timeless. It makes us ask ourselves, what dangers are we allowing to look ordinary today, right now, simply because they're wrapped in a package of familiarity and respectability?